Today I'm going to be accompanied with Tiffany and Abel, and we're going to talk about the Joker, and we're going to do a little film analysis on how this movie, The Joker, can relate to evilness. To kind of get started, we're going to talk about who the Joker is. Um, Basically, in the movie The Joker, the main protagonist, Arthur Fleck, was introduced as an individual who had aspirations to become a stand-up comedian. He had a compassionate relationship with his mother Penny until he found out that she had lied to him and abused him as a child. During his abuse, Arthur suffered severe head trauma during his childhood, in which is believed to give him an uncontrollable laughing disorder, and which kind of makes him laugh involuntarily when he's tensed. Um, in the beginning of the movie, Arthur appeared to be a kind yet troubled man with a forgotten dark past. Arthur struggled with fitting into society in his city, Gotham. As a man struggling to find his way in Gotham, longing for any light to kind of shine on him, he tries to become a stand-up comic, but it didn't really go too well. People were always laughing at him instead of his jokes. Kind of getting caught in a cycle in Gotham City between apathy, cruelty, and ultimately betrayal. Arthur makes one bad decision after another that brings in a cycle and a chain reaction of escalating events, which his gritty character kind of later develops into this new persona as the Joker. Today, Abel, Tiffany, and I were going to talk about three main topics, debating whether the Joker is insane or just evil, whether it was in his nature to be evil or if he was nurtured to be that way, and if he had empathy or not. I'm going to be talking a little bit about insane and evil, whether the Joker is insane or evil or not. So, to get started, our first topic of discussion today is going to be insanity and evil. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, evil is defined as immorality and wickedness. However, on the contrary, Dr. FERES explains in a lecture that insanity is defined as a mental illness of such a severe nature that a person cannot distinguish fantasy from reality and cannot conduct their affairs due to psychosis or has an uncontrollable impulsive behavior. Dr. FERES introduced a really good TED Talk in lecture this semester involving a neuroscientist by the name of Simon Baron-Cohen. In his discussion about evil, Cohen explains the definition of evil and says that it's very unscientific and unhelpful. It simply implies that someone is possessed by an artificial being and broadly states that evil is simply the absence of good. In exchange for his term evil, he uses another word, empathy. Cohen has a scale of empathy ranging from 0 to 6, 0 being the person who has no empathy and 6 being those who have the most empathy. So to kind of get into the next topic, we can relate these ideas to Arthur in the movie because as we've seen, as we watch the movie, we can argue that although he has some mental conditions from his previous childhood, and how he relies on medication to seduce those symptoms, Arthur's very cognitive. He's very smart. He's an individual who can differentiate the difference between fantasy and reality. And so, kind of getting straight to the point, he's not really an insane person because he's well aware of what's real and what's not. And he's able to think for himself, in a sense. However, on the other hand, people also talk about whether he's evil or not, and this is a point where it could kind of get tricky because it's kind of hard to pinpoint. It's very subjective. Arthur was introduced in the beginning of the movie as a person who was very harmless, very compassionate, and very humane. But as the movie progresses, he seems to be someone who kind of went through a breaking point in which society failed him, where he abandons his previous identity as Arthur and becomes the malevolent Joker. So I kind of have two short clips that I want to show in terms of comparing how Arthur was in the beginning of the movie and how he later transitioned into his new persona as the Joker.
I mean, these guys I love you too. Hey, Bobby, will you put the lights on? Who was that? Was that you? You want to stand up, please? Stand up. Yeah. What's your name?
Hi, Murray. Arthur?
Arthur?
My name's Arthur.
Oh, okay. Well, there's something special about you, Arthur, I can tell. Where you from?
I live right here in the city with my mother.
Okay, hold on. There's nothing funny about that. I lived with my mother before I made it. Just me and her. I'm that kid whose father went out for a pack of cigarettes, and he never came back.
I know what that's like, Murray. I've been the man of the house for as long as I can remember. I take good care of my mother.
All that sacrifice, she must love you very much.
She does. She always tells me to smile and put on a happy face. She says I was put here to spread joy and laughter.
So that's a little bit of getting a little glimpse of who Arthur was in the beginning of the film. We're just going to move on to the next video where we can show a pretty drastic difference between Arthur and his new persona, the Joker.
I'm so upset about these guys. If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I pass you every day and you don't notice me. But these guys, what, because Thomas Wayne cried about them on TV?
You have a problem with Thomas Wayne, too.
Yes, I do. Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
You finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity, Arthur. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men. Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everyone is awful.
But you're awful, Murray.
Me? I'm awful? Oh yeah, how am I awful?
Playing my video. Inviting me on the show. You just wanted to make fun of me. You're just like the rest of them.
You don't know the first thing about me, pal. Look what happened because of what you did, what it led to. There were riots out there. 2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get
I don't think so.
when you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash?
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get.
Call the police.
Get what you fucking deserve.
So that was the second clip. Pretty big difference between Arthur in the beginning of the movie and Arthur after he adopts his persona as the Joker. Kind of using Cohen's 0 to 6 empathy scale. I would argue that in the beginning, you would see someone that has a scale of empathy between the level 3 and 6. He was very charismatic, very friendly, but as the movie continues and how society continues to fail him, I would later argue that once he becomes a Joker, his level of empathy gets pretty close to 0, or maybe even at 0. According to the lecture, 0 negative is a level of empathy that includes people with borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. And you can see that pretty well here, that he has a borderline personality disorder. So yeah, it's kind of crazy what you can see. But the Joker's gone through a lot of suffering, and it's definitely taken a big toll in his empathy. But I don't think there is any signs of being insane. He's very well aware and very well cognitive of what reality and fantasy is. So what he did to those 3 businessmen in the subway, taking their life, and shortly taking Murray's life in this clip, shows 0 empathy, because he did it very impulsively and without any remorse or any regret. So that's a little bit about Insanity and Evil. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to Tiffany and Abel, who will elaborate more about Joker's empathy and his evilness being nurtured.
Nature versus nurture in the film it's shown that the nature that he had genetic issues when he was born, and like he needed help, so he would have definitely had psychotherapy, medication to help his condition. Due to him being poor, there and a lot of defunding in the social programs, he had a lack of getting help from the doctors and getting the medication he needed. And for him to cope from this ways, he would try to dance, become a clown, and try to connect with people to help cope his issue. And this caused him to hallucinate and make fantasies in his head during the film. This caused a lot of issues. He tries to connect with other peoples, and he wanted to do that. And him trying to being happy, trying to make people laugh was one of the things. But this definitely in the film caused a lot of sadness and confusion because he would put on a makeup, a fantasy that he was happy, but when he would go to work, people would beat him up, showing the film, and every day he would come home taking care of his sick mother, and that couldn't able to take care of him, and he would try to hold his past and suppress it, and this caused him a lot of issues throughout his life. In this clip right here, in the Joker, he was there's a kid. He tries to make him laugh, but he's just acting all weird, and he would laugh, and that was part of his defense mechanism, and people didn't know that was a condition. And I feel like in our life, in our society, people don't know when they're actually having mental issues, and there's a lot of research that has shown that most people do have mental issues and they don't even know it. So I'm gonna show this clip real quick.
You please stop bothering my kid?
I wasn't bothering.
Just stop. But you think that's funny?
I'm sorry. I have to.
In that clip, it showed that he had his condition, and people don't understand like mental illness, and that's ways that he did for that lady. That his defense mechanism is him laughing. He doesn't know how to work with people, and he's very socially awkward. So another issue about of this nature is that he had trauma. He discovered it's true that he was adopted and abused as a child, and this caused him to realize his whole life is a fantasy. And him doing that, him realizing it, caused him to become the Joker. He killed his mom. He stabbed his former coworker, and he found out his love, his relationship with himself was a complete lie. And nurture has allowed child abuse as a kid, and this is affecting a lot of people. That's his condition, and it's definitely a scary sight. And it's showing this other clip right here, showing that when he finds out he's adopted, it breaks his heart.
Why does this try to be happy all the time?
Hey, listen, man, I'm just an administrative assistant, like a clerk. You know, all I do is file paperwork. I don't know what to tell you, but you should see somebody. You know, they got programs, city services, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. They cut all those.
All right, here it is. Fleck, Penny Fleck. Let's see. Diagnosed by Dr. Benjamin Stoner. Oh, the patient suffers from delusional psychosis and narcissistic personality disorder. Was found guilty of endangering the welfare of her own child. Right. You said she's your mom? Uh, I'm sorry, man. Like I said, I can't release these records, without proper forms. I could get in trouble. Look, if you want to bring your mom in here to sign, that'll be much easier. But I can't let this go without her signature. Okay? Sorry. No, man. Come on, man. Hey!
We went over this, Penny. You adopted him. We have all the paperwork right here.
That's not true. Thomas had that all made up. So it stayed our secret.
You also stood by when one of your boyfriends repeatedly abused your adopted son and battered you. Penny, your son was found tied to a radiator in your filthy apartment, malnourished with multiple bruises across his body and severe trauma to his head.
I never heard him crying. He's always been such a happy little boy.
So basically in that scene, basically tells that he found out he's adopted and he was abused as a kid. And like I said, this trauma can affect you a lot of ways. And this made him a psychopath. In the film, this is how he becomes the Joker. He realized his whole life was a lie. He realized the truth, and he becomes who he is. He becomes a killer, murderer, and it's shown in the film that he starts killing his mom and so forth. And definitely, trauma is definitely a problem. Like shown in this film, and this could happen in real life about how psychopath happens. They try to suppress it, and eventually when it comes out like a bad scene, and this is definitely shown in this film.
Okay. You can go. Don't look. Just go.
Hey, Arthur.
Yeah.
Oh, can you get a look?
Jerry? You were the only one that was ever nice to me. Okay, Dad. It's okay, Dad.
Empathy versus the lack of. Before we circle back to the video, I want to discuss if the lack of empathy equals or can explain cruelty. According to Simon Baron-Cohen, professor of developmental psychopathology at the University of Cambridge in the UK and director of the university's Autism Research Center, a low level of empathy does not necessarily lead to cruelty, and the relationship is not symmetric, which is demonstrated in the Joker. For Arthur Fleck, the topic of empathy versus the lack of is sort of tricky because he demonstrates both. The reason why Fleck murdered so many people was due to their lack of empathy for him as well as his lack of empathy towards them. He felt as if he was wrong in a way, which is why he committed the murders that he did. However, there are also instances in the movie in which he demonstrated that he had and was capable of having empathy. For example, when he was still oblivious to his mother's wrongdoing, such as the abuse he had endured, he took care and truly loved his sickly, mentally ill mother. In addition, now tying back to the video that was just previously shown, when Gary and Randall came to visit Fleck because they found out that his mother had passed away, Fleck only killed Randall and let Gary go because, according to Fleck, as shown in the video, Gary was the only one that was ever nice to him, showing that he was in fact capable of feelings and empathy towards people, and that he did not necessarily kill just to kill. He still had feelings and was able to demonstrate his sense of empathy through this. Overall, The Joker is a great movie to allow one to understand evil. With the many comparisons that we took to help us understand evil, from insanity versus evil to nature versus nurture and empathy versus the lack of, it is safe to say that there are many ways that Arthur Fleck, or better known as the Joker, could be interpreted using the comparisons that we used. Though we interpreted the portrayal of evil in the film one way, the understanding of such is essentially subjective, and I encourage you to interpret it in your own way as well. Thank you.